Growing up in the early 80s, I remember over the weekends, my siblings and I would go outside, play with the children in the estate. Those were fun times. Today, you ask children to go outside and play, they think you're punishing them. They would much rather stay indoors, which is what we used to call detention. Just like clockwork, at 6 p.m., we would rush back into the house, gather around the TV. Remember the ones that had the antenna propped up on top of them? Yeah, that was the one we used to have. And for 1 solid hour, we would watch the one family-friendly episode and TV news broadcast, available on the only TV station, Voice of Kenya, at the time. And just like our TV station, our information was limited and restricted. There was no internet. Now just close your eyes for a few seconds and think about this. We had no laptops, no smartphones, no computers, no internet. Now, for some of you, even as I'm saying this, your heart is probably beating a little bit faster, trying to fathom, how did we survive? And yes, we did survive. And for others, this may actually bring a smile to your face as you think about the fond memories. There was a single gatekeeper in society, and there was a predetermined path we needed to follow to get educated, earn a living, and become successful. It was like we were coming out of this one factory. At school, I was praised. I was the star. We were praised for coloring neatly within the lines of that little box. I can see some of you have shared that same experience. I even got a math degree, not because it was the subject that I most enjoyed, but because I thought that I would look smart. And I came to find out that there were a number of other people who made similar choices with the education that they chose. I continued to follow this script that was handed down to me, not realizing that the world was changing very fast, and that this script was becoming outdated and irrelevant. By my mid-30s, I felt miserable. I felt like I was failing in almost every aspect of my life. At work, I needed to shape up or get shipped out. I was burning the midnight oil and couldn't seem to understand why I was not succeeding. I knew that I needed help. As I was pondering and thinking about what I needed to do to get unstuck in my career, I came across this book by Daniel Pink called A Whole New Mind. Now, in it, he talks about something that struck me. He calls it the conceptual age, the age of heart, connection, and art. He further argues that it is critical for us to harness the power of the left side of our brain and the right side of our brain. Now, by the way, I think I'd read enough books by that time, but there was something about this that made me start looking at my world and asking myself, had I become a widget in this assembly line? And was Daniel Pink telling me that I could actually build a career with passion, meaning, and purpose? And that if I did not change and change fast, that I would become irrelevant? Surely, there had to be a better way of living beyond what I had been doing up until this point. I had a yearning deep within me that wanted to be more, do more. Perhaps it was what Daniel Pink referred to in the book when he wrote that we need to tap into our empathetic, intuitive, and creative capabilities. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but I was looking for a venture where I could bring my newly enlightened self to work, where I could pour my energy into a vision that was larger than me, and where I could help to unlock the potential of other Africans like me. Now, I came to find out that I was not alone in this quest. There were other individuals just like me who were on their path of self-discovery. Now, in my case, I just happened to connect with women on this path. Perhaps it has to do with our intuitive superpowers. It was 6 years ago that I co-founded a network with these like-minded women. Now, through a shared sense of purpose, we created a safe space where we could submit ourselves to a higher reckoning and a curiosity to begin to examine the things that were holding us back. It was in this circle that my heart began to open, and I began to gradually chip away at the things that had tethered me previously. Now that my eyes were open, I could begin to see the divide, this chasm, where I was and where I wanted to be to become the creator of my own future. I also began to realize that this chasm was different for different people, based on your education, your background. For me, crossing over meant that I needed to lean in, that I needed to be willing to make mistakes and connect with other people from different backgrounds and adapt to technology. Why technology? Because this is what I saw as the missing link. And for today, I want to focus this conversation around the digital divide. With the pandemic, we're beginning to see an increasing use of technology in our daily lives. From our grandparents, our parents, our peers, we're connecting to technology like never before. We're embracing it to connect with our loved ones, to continue to remain productive, even as we work remotely. I'm seeing how teenagers, like my niece, Dimuna, is creating online content and testing out different ways to monetize it. I'm also seeing how my nephew, Malambo, my sister's son, is pursuing his passion in gaming and has recently enrolled in a school to study gaming design. Now imagine that. My sister, who went through the same formation as I did, now has a daughter who's pursuing the things that light her up on the inside. Dimuna is much clearer about what she wants to do because she's had consistent access to test, refine, and share her ideas with the world. Me at 16, did I have that level of clarity? How many of us here were clear about what we really wanted to do at 16? Technology can be an equalizer. Whether you're a mama mboga selling your vegetables on the side streets of Busia in a rural town, or whether you're living in the pinnacle cities with a pedigree education, technology can be leveraged to unlock value. Now, there might be some people who are of the school of thought that that child living in the rural area without technology, who's probably playing with a couple of sticks while rolling a tire down the whole hillside, is happy. While there may be some truth to that, it doesn't change the fact that the way in which the world is changing and where future job opportunities will lie will require for us to do something about this access. Let's face it, there's a stark difference between someone who's grown up with consistent access and someone who has not. The digital divide is increasing the inequalities gap, and it's presenting a barrier that keeps marginalized populations like women, girls, underserved communities locked out of opportunities that give them a dignified life. The long-term effect is that it can create a vicious cycle that extends to the next generation. Now, this is not a simple problem to fix, and it requires the collective will of government, development agencies, and private sector to marshal and mobilize resources for a sustainable solution. So I began to ask myself, what is it that I can do? In my case, the steps I took were to change and shift my career from being a banker to being a technologist, and to join an organization that focuses on connecting brilliance with opportunity and trains technical skills here in Africa. So the stars were beginning to align for me, and I moved from feeling stuck to getting more clarity. I moved now from I started building a career where I centered it around something that was bigger than myself. In practical terms, let me tell you about the story of Butina, a primary school teacher in Tunisia. Butina was able to overcome the obstacles of no coding background, no computers in school, to learn new skills and use those skills to teach her students how to program. And then there's Paul, a software engineer in Kenya. Can you believe that Paul not long ago was a cleaner, and he used his spare time to learn something new? Paul and Butina are among 80,000 Africans who have gone through training in coding, problem solving, and communication skills, and are now better equipped to become productive contributors in today's workforce. Butina and Paul are now role models, and anyone who hears their story is invited to reimagine new possibilities in their lives. From my perspective and from what I have seen, digital skills and access is less about the technology and more about cultivating hope and confidence. And I believe everyone is entitled to this. So this is my story, this is what I've done. And I just want to say that depending on where you are, you may have a different journey. Now, in my case, it took me maybe reading 15 or 17 books before I finally got to that aha moment, but I'm also still going through the journey. What about you? What are some steps that you can take to move forward? Here are a couple of suggestions that I have. If you are a Malambo or a Dimuna, and by virtue of how you've been raised and the access you've had, continue to lean in with curiosity and explore this world that is your oyster to become productive members of society. If you saw yourself in my journey, with this ever-changing world, let's continue to learn from the younger people, to unlearn, to ask questions, because this younger generation makes up for 65% of our population today and 100% of the future employees that we will hire. And if you are listening to this and you can influence policy, you have a responsibility to make bold decisions that will give our children the access they need to become creators of their future. As you're thinking about this, I want to leave you with a few words by Jim Loray. There is only one way to remain relevant, and that is to continue to innovate with purpose, an open mind, and ever-increasing speed. Thank you.